It has now been 24 days since the US-Israeli war on Iran escalated 24 days of missile strikes, diplomatic firestorms, and a region teetering on the edge of a much wider conflict. But today, March 23rd, the narrative took a sharp and bewildering turn, plunging everyone from world capitals to ordinary citizens into a thick fog of confusion, competing claims, and high-stakes political theater. At the center of this storm is Donald Trump. Before boarding his plane for a trip to Japan, the former president stepped in front of the press corps and delivered a series of remarks that sent shockwaves through financial markets, military command centers, and the Iranian political establishment. With the easy confidence of a dealmaker, he announced that he had ordered the White House to halt his military strikes on Iranian energy facilities for 5 days. He spoke of hope, saying he believed the war could end because, in his words, Iran was finally willing to come to the table and make an agreement. But it was his social media post, released just hours later, that truly ignited the firestorm. In his signature-style direct, declarative, and dripping with optimism, Trump wrote that he was pleased to report that the United States and Iran had engaged in good and productive talks over the past several days. He said these discussions were aimed at a comprehensive solution to the conflict in the Middle East. He described them as part of a deep constructive dialogue that would continue throughout the week. And then came the operational order. Based on these talks, he said, he had directed the Department of War to suspend all military operations against Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure again for a period of 5 days. The pause, he added, would depend entirely on the success of the ongoing meetings and discussions. When he spoke to reporters, Trump filled in more details that only deepened the mystery. He revealed that his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and his envoy, Steve Witkoff, had met with a senior Iranian official. He did not disclose where the meeting took place, nor did he name the Iranian official, but he said the meeting had started on Sunday and continued through Monday evening. He said he had received the latest report and based on that, had decided to post his optimistic message. Then came an even more striking claim. Trump told reporters that he had actually been planning to launch a strike on one of Iran's largest power plants within 48 hours. He said as a response to Iran's closure of the Strait of Hormuz. But then, he said, he received a phone call from the Iranian side. That call, he claimed, led immediately to the current conversations. He framed it as a classic Trumpian negotiation. If the talks go well, the strike plan would be dropped. If not, he warned, there could be missile attacks that would hit the heart of Iran. The press pressed him on a fundamental question. Who exactly are you negotiating with? Just days earlier, Trump had admitted he didn't know which Iranian leaders to talk to. Now, he seemed to have found his counterpart. When asked, Trump responded by saying they were dealing with a man he described as the most respected person, the leader who represents the country. He stopped short of naming him, but the implication hung in the air. When a reporter suggested the name Mujahideen, referring to a figure believed to be injured and out of public view, Trump did not confirm or deny. And then he went further, sketching the outline of what sounded like a sweeping American proposal. He said the US had put forward a set of strict conditions for Iran, up to 15 points, he said. The most relevant, he explained, was that there should be no weapons left in the country. He added that any nuclear material Iran possessed would be taken by the United States, which would control and secure it. We would go and take it ourselves, he said. He framed this not as a hostile takeover, but as a path toward what he called bringing back the Great Iran when Iran is safe. He said, it will be good not only for Iran, but for the other countries in the Middle East, the Arab states, the Gulf Cooperation Council nations. And he made clear, the United States would have the final word. Before boarding Air Force One or F-41, as it was referred to, Trump summarized his vision. A good deal. No more war. No more weapons in the Gulf. He said Iran was willing to agree to this. But from Tehran, the response was not one of agreement. It was one of defiance, denial, and dismissal. Within hours, Iranian officials and state-affiliated media launched a coordinated counter-narrative designed to dismantle every pillar of Trump's story. The Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, took to social media with a message that could not have been clearer. There were no negotiations with the United States, he wrote. He called Trump's claims fake news, accusing the Americans of deliberately spreading false information to manipulate oil and financial markets. He went on to say that the United States and Israel were in a difficult position. and that the Iranian people were demanding full sanctions against the aggressors. He declared that all Iranian officials stood firmly behind the supreme leader and the people until their goals were achieved. The Iranian Foreign Ministry weighed in as well. Spokesperson Ismail Baghi was quoted by Iranian news agencies as saying that there would be no negotiations with the United States, period. He acknowledged that many messages had been received from friendly countries in the Middle East suggesting that Washington was interested in talks, but he said Iran's position had not changed. He issued a stark warning. Any attack on Iran's energy sector would be met with a swift and effective response from Iranian forces. Local media added further layers of pushback. Tasnim news agency, which is close to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, published a headline declaring that a source had denied any talks between Iran and the Oz. The headline went further. Donald Trump has backed down, citing an unnamed senior security official. The report claimed that the United States had withdrawn its threat after Iran made clear it would respond strongly to any attack on its power plants. The same source attributed Trump's apparent reversal not to productive negotiations, but to market pressure and the US debt crisis. From the beginning, the source said, Iran has been defending itself until it decides to take necessary measures. The source added that Iran had only sent out apologies to the countries involved, a cryptic phrase that suggested diplomatic warnings had been issued, not overtures for a deal. Another outlet, Iran International, quoted Ghalibaf's tweet and emphasized that Iranian officials were unified in rejecting any claim of negotiations while the two sides remained at war. So, within a single day, two completely incompatible realities had been laid bare. On one side, Donald Trump was describing back-channel meetings, productive dialogues, and a 5-day pause in strikes. On the other, Iran was insisting there had been no meetings, no negotiations, and no change in its position, only an American retreat in the face of Iranian resolve. But even as the rhetoric hardened, the diplomacy continued, only this time through third parties. Turkish media outlets reported that Turkey had joined with Egypt and Pakistan to act as mediators between the United States and Iran. This came amid heightened tensions in the Strait of Hormuz and following Trump's announcement of a planned delay in military operations. According to sources who spoke to Reuters, the Turkish Foreign Ministry confirmed that the three countries had been exchanging views with Washington and Tehran over the past 2 days, all aimed at reducing the escalating tensions. The foreign ministers of Turkey, Egypt, and Pakistan had held talks with US envoy Steve Witkoff and with the Iranian foreign minister to promote open communication. Turkey's foreign minister, Hakan Fidan, confirmed that high-level diplomatic contacts had taken place. A Turkish diplomatic source told Reuters that Fidan had also spoken with the EU foreign policy chief and several US officials to discuss steps toward ending the war. In addition, Fidan had held phone calls with representatives from Qatar and other regional powers who stressed the need to end the conflict. Oman, a country with historically close ties to Iran, was also involved in separate discussions. The White House, for its part, did not publicly confirm that its negotiating team was in direct contact with these three countries, but the pattern was clear. Even as public statements grew more confrontational, a parallel track of quiet diplomacy was unfolding. Meanwhile, the war itself continued to grind on. On March 23rd, Israeli forces carried out continued attacks on missile sites inside Iran. At least 3 sites were targeted. Inside Israel, civilians were warned to seek safety as missiles and drones continued to be fired from Iranian-backed forces. The most serious attacks of the day took place in Lebanon, where Israeli artillery struck civilian areas. The Israeli military confirmed that they had been targeting enemy positions, but acknowledged that some strikes had hit unintended targets. Over the past 24 hours, Israeli operations had reached 63 separate strikes, most of them using rockets and artillery from across the border. Iran, meanwhile, issued new warnings. If its islands or coasts were attacked, it vowed, it would not bow down. Instead, it threatened to unleash mine explosions in the waters of other Gulf countries, a form of asymmetric warfare that could choke the region's maritime trade and send oil prices soaring once again. Saudi Arabia reported that it continued to intercept missiles fired at uninhabited locations, though some of those locations were uncomfortably close to critical oil facilities. And then came a mysterious incident, a helicopter crash inside Saudi Arabia. The crash killed 1 pilot and left investigators scrambling for answers. The timing raised immediate suspicions. Was it an accident, or had it been caused by an Iranian missile strike? The investigation was ongoing, But the incident only added to the sense of a region where the line between accident and attack had become dangerously blurred. As airstrikes continued from American bases in Saudi Arabia, the US Senate noted that it was not just American bases coming under fire. More than 300 civilian locations had been attacked by airstrikes across the border. The scale of the violence was staggering, even if it had been overshadowed by the day's diplomatic drama. And yet, in the financial capitals of the world, the reaction to Trump's statements was immediate and telling. Oil prices fell sharply on Monday. British crude dropped 17%, falling from $114 to $100 a barrel, as WTI crude fell below $92, down from $100. Financial markets, which had been bracing for a wider conflict, suddenly relaxed. European stocks quickly reversed their losses. Major foreign stock markets rebounded. The message from investors was clear. They were betting that the prospect of a deal, even a shaky, contested one, was better than the certainty of continued escalation. So where does all of this leave us? We are now in a strange and precarious place. Donald Trump is presenting himself as the architect of a breakthrough, claiming back-channel meetings, productive talks, and a pause in strikes. Iran is publicly rejecting every element of that narrative, insisting there are no negotiations, no deals, and no retreat from its principled position. Regional powers like Turkey, Egypt, and Pakistan are quietly trying to mediate, hoping to pull both sides back from the brink. The war continues on the ground, with missiles, airstrikes, and civilian casualties mounting, and the financial markets are signaling that even the rumor of peace is enough to calm their nerves. But the deeper reality is this. We are witnessing a collision between two entirely different ways of understanding the conflict. One side sees negotiation and the possibility of an off-ramp. The other sees a propaganda campaign designed to manipulate markets and mask a withdrawal. And somewhere in the middle, caught between these competing truths, are the people of the region watching, waiting, and hoping that whatever happens next does not consume them. For now, there is no clarity, only confusion, contradiction, and the ever-present threat that the war could escalate again at any moment. What we know is that the next 5 days will be critical. Trump has set a clock, Iran has drawn a line, and the mediators are working the phones, trying to keep the door open to something that neither side is yet willing to admit exists. We will watch, we will report, and we will wait to see which version of events, the deal or the denial, ultimately shapes the future of this war.